Hi, I'm Chadley McKnife. I am an autistic and mentally ill visual storytelling student, and today I'm going to be talking about how Invader Zim deals with disability and ableism. I don't really have a strict script for this, so I have an outline, but a lot of this is just going to be me talking off the top of my head. But before we start, I would like to make note of the fact that I do not know the intentions of Jonan Vasquez in regards to how this topic was dealt with in Invader Zim. I don't know how much it was really trying to really deal with this topic, but the subtext is there, and a lot of the time more than subtext, and so I'm going to be talking about it. Invader Zim has a lot of characters in it that read as being in some way disabled. In particular, a lot of the characters read as autistic or in some other way neurodivergent. And so I'm going to go through and talk about the various characters and why I feel that they are coded as being in some way disabled. So to start, let's talk about Zim. With Zim, it's pretty noticeable because he is what is described as a defective Irkin, and that's pretty noticeably a metaphor for disability. In his society, hierarchy is determined by height, and he is very, very much shorter than all the other Irkin, and that in and of itself is somewhat of a disability metaphor, though possibly just more of a being different type of metaphor. But then there's also a lot of other stuff, such as he seems to either be hard of hearing or to have some sort of audio processing issue. At a panel, I think Jonan Vasquez actually jokingly referred to him as hard of hearing, but that does make sense considering the way that he's written and the way that he acts throughout the show. Zim also reads very strongly as being neurodivergent in some way. One of the most noticeable pieces of evidence is the bus scene, where he's, noticing all the little details of just how absolutely aggravating it is being on this bus with all these people, and that seems very much like sensory overload. And then there's also a lot of other things that cause him to read as being neurodivergent. Many people also interpret him as having some kind of mental health issues. I've seen several people say that he reads as having PTSD, such as with the way that he will just not remember things and then suddenly he will. It reads as him dealing with dissociation as a result of PTSD. And I've seen people say that he reads as having various other mental health issues as well. Though it tends to be that everyone is pretty much reading him as having whatever mental health problem they have or know the most about. But he is a character that has turned out to be very relatable to mentally ill people. And then with him being neurodivergent, he tends to be interpreted as either having autism, ADHD, or both. And either one would make sense for him, and both would also make a lot of sense. And then there's also autistic and mentally ill icon, Dib Membrane. he reads very strongly as being autistic. I could list off a few autistic traits that he has right now. He has very focused interests that tend to be considered, like, not normal. He's very interested in ufology and cryptozoology. He seems to have a lot of trouble with, like, forming friendships with other people, and he seems to struggle with empathy. He also tends to say things that are absolutely horrifying and not seem to realize the implications of saying those things and how that will affect people's perception of him. And oftentimes it seems like he doesn't really care that much. That's something that's very relatable to me, because when I was younger, I would, say things that were absolutely horrifying as a result of having very, very strong emotions because of being autistic. And this is very noticeable with Dib. Pretty much the entire Membrane family reads as being autistic. However, Dib is the main one who, gets treated like crap in universe because of it. Particularly because he has less socially acceptable interests, and then he also shows signs of having some kind of mental health problem. It's less noticeable throughout the show, sort of, but it becomes extremely noticeable in issues 1 and 2 of the comics, and then in Enter the Florpus, with the whole arc where basically Zim disappears, and Dib decides to sit in front of his computer screen watching a bunch of security camera feeds, thoroughly convinced that if he looks away for even a second, then Zim will do something horrible. And he just stays there, just sitting there slowly dying for months, maybe, who knows. Because it's a cartoon, it doesn't tend to have very much of a proper timeline, but if a real person were to do that, they would die. Or get extremely sick. And because it's a cartoon, he doesn't have to deal with the long-term consequences of doing that. But throughout the show, he is consistently perceived as having some kind of psychotic disorder, and he's consistently treated badly because of it, and treated as lesser than everyone else, and he is severely neglected and seems to be verbally abused at times, and I don't even know. Because he is perceived as having some kind of psychotic disorder, Dib is also treated particularly badly by Professor Membrane, who I absolutely despise. Professor Membrane is overall not a good parent, but Dib tends to get the brunt of his mistreatment because he is perceived as being insane. And a lot of the other characters in Invader Zim also read as being in some way neurodivergent. Like I said, the entire Membrane family reads as being neurodivergent. And a lot of the other characters will sometimes show neurodivergent traits. And I think this is very good, because it helps to show that neurodivergent people are incredibly diverse, and there's a lot of different kinds of neurodivergent experiences. Gur is one character who, well, he is a robot, and I generally don't like trying to, like with robots, it's a bit weird for them to read as neurodivergent, because with that, they're literally machines, and that kind of plays into certain negative stereotypes. But Gur is often perceived as being in some way neurodivergent as well, because, like I said, a huge portion of the characters in Invader Zim are often perceived as being neurodivergent by the audience. And I personally agree with that a lot of them are neurodivergent coded. Now I would like to talk about how Invader Zim deals with ableism. So with the whole defective Irken thing, that's pretty clearly, like, talking about ableism. Because Zim looks different than the other Irken, because he is very short, and because he acts different than the other Irken, because he is neurodivergent and possibly mentally ill, he is considered to be defective, and because of that, the other Irken want to kill him. And these themes of ableism are also really noticeable with Dib. Like I said, he is perceived by other characters as having some kind of psychotic disorder, and because of that, he is often treated badly by both his family and his peers. He's also shown being sent to a mental institution where he is treated very badly, and I think this is shown multiple times, like once in the show and once in the comics, I think, which this sort of thing is kind of a running thing in Jonan Vasquez's work, from what I can tell, like pointing out how bad mental institutions can be. With both Zim and Dib, I feel like their stories focus a lot on the theme of demanding respect on your own terms. Both of them are treated badly due to being in some way disabled, and both of them are trying to earn the respect of their societies without having to, like, give up who they are or become normal. And where they go wrong is that they are trying to fit within a system that wasn't made for them, instead of attempting to work outside of that system or dismantle it altogether. They're both incredibly prideful and self-centered and petty, and because of that, they aren't really able to realize that they need to see the bigger picture and have solidarity with each other to dismantle these systems that are mistreating both of them. Both Zim and Dib are living within systems that expect everyone to basically be like little robots or cogs in a machine, just filling in a particular role, doing what they're supposed to do, and then eventually dying. And the problem is that neither of them can fit into those systems, and they want to be able to and to attain respect in those systems, even though those systems are not made for them, and even if they are personally able to attain respect from those systems, it won't change the fact that other people like them will still be mistreated. So, in conclusion, I feel like Invader Zim deals with having disabled coded characters pretty well and does a pretty good job of talking about like themes of ableism and the existential horror of attempting to survive and function in a society that was very much not made for you. And honestly, Dib is like an incredibly relatable character for me, and he is a lot like how I was when I was younger. Invader Zim isn't the best show in the world, but I think it does a pretty decent job of talking about these issues in particular.